It's hard to explain what happened without sounding like I'm overreacting, or that maybe I'm just another guy making a mountain out of a molehill. But trust me, this wasn't just some small issue. It was a gut punch that I still can't shake off. The night started like any other, quiet, simple, ordinary. I wasn't expecting anything out of the blue, definitely not a change that would rattle me to my core. I never asked for anything grand in my life. I'm a simple guy, really. My days blend into one another, and I don't mind it that way. But one small decision, one moment, set everything on fire. It all began with a question. Are you okay with me going? That question came from the woman I had spent every day with for the last 3 years. No, we weren't married, but we had built something strong. At least I thought we did. She had been invited to a gathering, just a small get-together with some old friends. To me, it seemed harmless, so I told her she could go. But I had no idea the true weight of that decision. The invitation came from an old acquaintance of hers, someone I didn't know very well, but had heard about. The name didn't ring any bells at first, but it stuck in my mind. She had met him years ago when they worked on a project together, and though I knew there had been no romantic involvement, there was still something unsettling about the idea of her going. Maybe it was the way she spoke about him that made me feel uneasy. Or maybe it was just instinct. But I told her, yeah, go ahead. It's fine. And in hindsight, I should have been more firm, but that's not how I operate. I'm not the type to hold her back from doing things just because I feel a little off about it. That's just not who I am. So she went. And that's when the silence began. At first, I didn't think much of it. I went about my evening, did some things around the apartment, and watched a bit of TV. But then, as the hours passed, I realized something. I hadn't heard from her. Now, this wasn't unusual. She's independent, and we've always given each other space. But after the first few hours, I started to feel uneasy. It wasn't like her to just disappear without a word. I didn't know who she was with, what they were doing, or how late they planned to stay out. Around midnight, I sent her a text. Just a quick one, simple, how's it going? No reply. Now, I don't consider myself the jealous type. I really don't. But as I sat there, a little buzz of worry started to creep in. Something felt off. The house was too quiet, and my mind began to play tricks on me. The fact that she hadn't responded was eating at me. Was she having a good time? Or was something else going on? I convinced myself that I was overthinking things, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than she was letting on. By 2 a.m., I felt like I was going mad. I had texted her again, and then another time. Nothing. I started imagining scenarios. Maybe she was out with some guy I didn't know. Maybe she was laughing and enjoying herself, forgetting that I was sitting here, staring at my phone, wondering if everything was fine. The more I thought about it, the worse it got. I wanted to call her, but something inside me held me back. I didn't want to seem needy or controlling. I wanted to trust her, to give her the freedom she asked for. But as the hours dragged on, that trust began to fray at the edges. It was nearly 4 a.m. when the front door clicked open. I had fallen asleep on the couch, my mind exhausted from the spiraling thoughts. I didn't even hear her come in, but I heard her footsteps. She was back, and I still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I didn't get up. I didn't say anything. I just stayed on the couch, pretending to sleep. I figured I'd wait for her to come to me, to offer some kind of explanation or maybe just tell me about her night. But nothing came, and that's how the night ended. No conversation, no answers. She had come back at the crack of dawn, and I still had no idea what had actually happened. But the next morning, when I woke up to find a message waiting for me, everything changed. And the story I thought I knew would turn upside down, unraveling in ways I never could have imagined. But, like I said, that's a story for part 2. And trust me, you'll want to hear it. The morning after was when I realized I was in deeper than I thought. I woke up to the sound of the kettle boiling in the kitchen, the faint aroma of coffee filling the air. I had no idea how long Eliza had been awake. I had been lying on the couch, pretending to sleep, but the truth was, I couldn't get any rest. When I finally opened my eyes, she was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She didn't seem to notice I was awake at first, and I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the silence that had settled between us. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, an apology, an explanation, anything, but it never came. It was like the night before never even happened. She acted like everything was fine. But then, I noticed it. My phone buzzed from across the room. I got up slowly, my curiosity piqued. I had one new message, and it was from her. I opened it, my heart skipping a beat. I'm sorry I didn't text you last night. I didn't want to bother you. Hope you weren't worried. The words seemed innocent enough, but they hit me like a ton of bricks. It was the way she phrased it. The fact that she didn't even try to explain herself or tell me about her night. Just a simple, almost dismissive apology, as if it didn't matter. That's when I started to feel the first crack in my trust. I stood there for a second, trying to decide if I should respond. But I didn't. I just stared at the screen, the weight of her message sinking in. There was something off about the whole situation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being kept in the dark. I walked into the kitchen, where she was still sitting, sipping her coffee. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, waiting for her to acknowledge me. Finally, she looked up, smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning," she said, her voice light. Almost too light. I tried to smile back, but it felt forced. "Morning. Did you have a good time last night?" She paused, her eyes darting briefly to the window before returning to me. "Yeah, it was nice. Just hung out, talked, drank a little. Nothing too wild." Her voice had that rehearsed tone, the kind you use when you're trying to downplay something, to make it sound casual when it really isn't. I nodded, not sure how to react. "I got your message," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "You didn't have to apologize for not texting. I just wasn't sure what was going on." Eliza set her mug down, her expression faltering for a moment. "Trevor, you know I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. You really don't have to worry so much." But the way she said it, like it was an inconvenience, made my stomach twist. I wanted to ask more, to press her on what really happened that night, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to come off as controlling. I didn't want to push her further away. So I let it go for the moment, but the seed of doubt was planted. Later that morning, I did something I never usually do. I checked her phone. I know it was wrong. It's not like I have a habit of invading her privacy, but something about the way she had acted that morning felt off. As I scrolled through her messages, I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find. I just needed to know if she was hiding something. And then, there it was. A message she'd received late last night, long after I had fallen asleep, from the person I least expected. "Had a great time tonight. Let's do this again soon. I'm really glad we talked." The message was from David, the guy she had been talking about, the one I didn't really know. My heart dropped into my stomach. It wasn't the message itself, but the tone, the closeness, the casual familiarity. It wasn't just a friendly text. It felt personal, like something more was going on. I couldn't breathe. My mind started racing. What was going on between them? Why hadn't she told me about this? Why was she acting like everything was fine when I knew, deep down, that there was more to the story? I had to confront her. I couldn't let this slide. But when I turned around, ready to confront her about what I had just found, she wasn't there. She had left. She hadn't even said goodbye. No note, no message, nothing. It was like she had just vanished. And that's when I realized I wasn't the one in control anymore. Whatever was happening between her and David, it was bigger than I had imagined. But that was just the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but everything was about to spiral out of control. And when she came back, everything would change in ways I couldn't have prepared for. But that's a story for part 3. Trust me, things are about to get a lot more complicated. I sat there, frozen, staring at the phone in my hands. I couldn't believe what I had just read. The message from David was still glaring at me, and my mind was racing, trying to piece together everything I thought I knew. But as soon as I stood up, ready to confront Eliza, I heard the door click behind me. She was back. I didn't even know how long she had been gone. It felt like hours. My heart was pounding in my chest as I turned around to face her. She was standing by the door, her coat still on, but her face was unreadable. "I went out for a walk," she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I couldn't even respond at first. The lie hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I wanted to say something, to demand an explanation, but the words wouldn't come. She walked past me and into the kitchen, like nothing had happened. I needed some air. "It's been a long night," she added, her tone flat, too casual. I stayed silent, watching her. Every inch of me was screaming for answers, but I didn't know how to approach her. I wanted to trust her, but that text from David, combined with her sudden disappearance, had shattered everything. I could feel the walls closing in around me. This wasn't just a small misunderstanding anymore. This was something bigger. And Eliza? She was acting like nothing was wrong. She didn't see it. Finally, I forced myself to speak. "Eliza, About last night. My voice felt weak, unsure. What happened with David? She paused, her hand on the kettle. For a second, she didn't move. Then, she turned around slowly, looking at me like I had just asked the most ridiculous question. David? She asked, as if the name meant nothing to her. I told you, he's just a coworker. We were talking, that's all. But the way she said it, so dismissive, so certain, made my gut twist. Why did she seem so calm, so unbothered? And why hadn't she mentioned him at all when she first came back? Really? I pressed, taking a step forward. Because the way you two were texting, it didn't sound like just a friendly conversation. My voice was shaking now, but I couldn't hold it in any longer. Eliza's expression shifted slightly. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed. I don't know what you want me to say, Trevor. You're making something out of nothing. I told you, we were just talking. She shook her head like I was the one being unreasonable. Maybe you're just overthinking things, like always. Her words stung. I wanted to yell, to demand the truth. But the way she looked at me, like I was the crazy one, made me second-guess everything. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I had no right to be upset. After all, she said it was nothing. But deep down, I knew it was something. Something I wasn't seeing, something she wasn't telling me. The silence between us stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. I could feel the tension building, but I didn't know how to break it. I didn't want to let it go, but I didn't know how to fight back without pushing her away even further. I turned around, not knowing where else to go. I needed space, a minute to think. But just as I was about to leave the room, I heard her voice again. You know, she said quietly. I didn't ask you to control me. I'm not your prisoner, Trevor. You don't have to know everything about my life. Those words hit harder than I expected. She had said them so softly, like they didn't matter, but they cut through me like a knife. I didn't know if I was hurt, angry, or just confused. I left the room without saying another word. The door slammed behind me, and I knew right then that things had changed. Something in her eyes had shifted. Something in me had shifted, but I still didn't know what was really going on. I didn't know if it was me, if it was her, or if something bigger was at play. But that text, that feeling I had in my gut, it wasn't going away. And soon, I'd have to decide if I could trust her, or if I'd just let her slip away. But that's when the next shock came. The thing that would make me question everything I thought I knew. That's for part 4. And trust me, it's going to get a lot darker. It was the smallest thing, almost unnoticeable, but I knew something was off when I saw it. A few days had passed since the conversation with Eliza. She had acted like everything was fine, like I was the one blowing things out of proportion. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There was an energy in our apartment now, an invisible tension hanging between us. I could feel it every time we spoke, every time she touched me. The distance was growing. One afternoon, while she was out running errands, I found myself cleaning up around the apartment, trying to keep busy. I opened a drawer in our kitchen to put some papers away, and that's when I saw it. Something I had never noticed before. A small, folded piece of paper tucked away at the back of the drawer. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't like Eliza to leave random pieces of paper lying around. I didn't want to be the kind of person who snooped through her things, but the curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded the paper, and my stomach dropped when I saw what it was. It was a receipt. A receipt for a hotel room. The date was from 2 days before, right around the time Eliza had been at that party. The name on the receipt wasn't hers. It was David's. I stared at it, my mind racing. What the hell was this? Why was there a receipt for a hotel with David's name on it? I could feel the panic building in my chest. I wanted to run to Eliza and confront her right then and there, but I couldn't. I couldn't do it without knowing the truth. I needed more. I kept staring at the receipt, my hands trembling. Something was happening that I wasn't ready to face. I knew that much. But what I didn't know was just how deep this rabbit hole would go. I had to know more. I had to find out if I was right, if my suspicions were actually true. And that's when I decided to do something I'd never considered before. I followed her. But that, too, was just the beginning. What I found when I started following Eliza would open my eyes to a side of her I never knew existed. And I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to look at her the same way again. But that's for part 5. And trust me, the truth will hit harder than anything you can imagine. I don't know what I expected to find when I decided to follow Eliza that day. Maybe I thought I'd see something small, some sign that would ease my mind or confirm that I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I had seen enough already. Too much, really. The receipt, the texts, the weird tension. The next afternoon, I decided to take a walk. I had no plan, no idea where I was going, but I needed space to think. And I knew she'd be gone for a couple of hours. It wasn't hard to spot her car in the parking lot, so I waited a few minutes before following her. My heart was pounding as I drove behind her, keeping a safe distance, my eyes glued to her car. She didn't seem to notice me at first. She drove as if everything was normal. After about 20 minutes, I watched her pull into a small cafe on the outskirts of town. My stomach twisted. Why was she here? I thought she was going to meet friends, or at least that's what she said. She'd told me nothing about this cafe. I parked a little further down the street, my hands clammy as I sat in the car, watching. I couldn't make out her face, but I could see her clearly enough through the window. She went inside, alone. For a moment, I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe she was just grabbing a coffee. Maybe it was nothing. But then, the door opened, and David walked in. My blood ran cold. It was him, the guy from the texts. The same guy whose name had been on the hotel receipt. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. They didn't talk immediately, but I saw them exchange a quick glance, almost too casual, too comfortable. It was the way they stood there, laughing, as if they shared some inside joke I wasn't privy to. They sat down at a corner booth, still chatting, and I could feel the anxiety building in me. I didn't want to watch, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know if I was right. As the minutes passed, I noticed something I hadn't expected. They weren't just talking. They were touching. A hand on her shoulder. A quick touch on the arm. I saw Eliza laugh, genuinely laugh, and it hit me like a punch. She hadn't laughed like that with me in weeks. Maybe longer. I didn't know how long I stayed there, just watching them. It felt like time stood still. My mind was racing, 1,000 thoughts flooding in all at once. How long had this been going on? Was this more than just some casual fling? Was I wrong to trust her? When they finally got up, I watched them walk out of the cafe together. The sight of them walking side by side, so comfortable with each other, made my stomach churn. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. It was like the ground beneath me was shifting, and everything I thought I knew about our relationship was crumbling. I couldn't follow them anymore. I couldn't stand the thought of it. I turned around and drove home in a daze, trying to process everything I had just seen. But that night, when Eliza walked through the door, everything changed. She was cheerful, acting like nothing was wrong, as if I hadn't seen her with David just hours earlier. I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but I couldn't. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know where to begin. So I stayed quiet. And that was the worst mistake I could have made. But the next morning, when she left for work, I found something that would take me even deeper into this mess, something I wasn't prepared for. And that's for part 6. The truth is a lot darker than I could have ever imagined. The next morning, Eliza left for work as usual. She kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine, her smile too bright, too rehearsed. I didn't say anything, not after what I had seen the day before. I couldn't, my mind was spinning. After she left, I found myself staring at the apartment, wondering what to do next. I needed more answers, something concrete. But I was starting to feel like I was losing myself in the search for them. Still, I couldn't let it go. Not after everything I had seen. I didn't plan on snooping, but when I was cleaning up the kitchen, I saw it. A small, folded piece of paper sticking out from under the pile of mail on the counter. My heart skipped. I didn't want to look. I really didn't. But I picked it up anyway, unfolding it slowly. It wasn't a grocery list or some random note. It was a message, a note written by Eliza, and it was clearly meant for someone else. I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was perfect. Let's keep this our secret for now. I need more of you. E. My chest tightened. It was from her, and it was meant for David. I knew it was him. The initials. The secrecy. I could almost hear her voice in the words as I read them over and over. I felt sick. Betrayed. But there was one thing I didn't understand. Why hadn't she just told me? Why hide it all? Why the secrecy? I wanted to scream, to throw the note across the room, but I didn't. I stood there, frozen, my fingers shaking as I held it. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative anymore. I needed to confront her. I needed to find out if this was the end or if we could fix it. But as I was about to leave the kitchen, I heard the front door open. Eliza was home early. I didn't have time to think. She walked in, her face lighting up when she saw me standing there. "Hey," she said, her voice bright. But then she paused. Her eyes flicked to the counter, where I was still holding the note. We locked eyes for a long moment, and I could feel the weight of the truth hanging between us. She knew I knew, and that's when everything came crashing down. But what she said next, that's for part 7. It's the moment that changed everything. I don't know what I expected her to say when she saw me holding that note, but it wasn't what happened next. She froze for a split second, her eyes darting from the note to my face. The smile faded from her lips, replaced by a strange kind of tension that filled the room. For a moment, I thought I might pass out from the weight of it all. I didn't speak at first. I couldn't. My heart was pounding in my chest, and all I could do was stare at her, waiting for her to say something. She finally took a step forward, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "Trevor," she began, but the way she said my name, it didn't feel like it was meant for me. It was almost like she was talking to a stranger. "Is this for David?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The question sounded stupid the moment it left my mouth, but it was all I could ask. I needed her to answer. I needed to hear it from her. Eliza blinked a few times, her eyes flicking nervously to the note in my hand. She didn't say anything at first, and for a split second, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd misinterpreted everything. But then she sighed, like she had been holding her breath for far too long, and finally spoke. "Yes," she said, the word hanging in the air. It wasn't a denial, not even an apology. It was just the truth, laid bare in the simplest form. "It's for him." My stomach twisted, and I felt a rush of heat in my chest. Anger, betrayal. It all hit me at once, and for a moment, I couldn't see straight. "Why?" I asked, the question tearing at me. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why hide it? Why lie to me this whole time?" Eliza took a step back, her eyes dropping to the floor. She seemed to be searching for something to say, but the words didn't come immediately. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. "I didn't want to destroy what we had. It wasn't supposed to happen this way, Trevor. But it did, and I didn't know how to fix it." I wanted to yell at her, to tell her how badly she had hurt me, how everything I thought I knew about our life together had been a lie. But I couldn't. I was too stunned. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had spent years with, had been living a secret life behind my back. And all this time, I had trusted her. "You've been seeing him, haven't you?" I asked, the words bitter on my tongue. This wasn't just a mistake. "You've been with him, haven't you?" Eliza didn't meet my gaze. Instead, she nodded, her voice shaking slightly as she spoke. "Yes, we've been seeing each other for a few months now. It just happened. I didn't plan it. But once it started, I couldn't stop." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt lightheaded, like I was going to collapse right then and there. I couldn't breathe. "For how long?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How long have you been cheating on me, Eliza?" She hesitated, then whispered, "About 6 months." 6 months. I staggered back, feeling like the ground had just been ripped out from under me. 6 months. All that time, I had no idea. I had trusted her with everything. And now, I was nothing more than a fool. "I'm sorry," she said, but the apology didn't feel real. It felt rehearsed. It felt like she was saying it because she knew she had to, not because she actually felt regret. I shook my head. "You don't get it, Eliza. You've destroyed everything. Everything we had was a lie. A joke." She stepped toward me, reaching out as though she was trying to touch me, but I pulled away. "Please, Trevor, I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could stop. But I couldn't. He's different. I didn't know how to tell you." Her words didn't matter anymore. Nothing she said could undo the hurt. I was looking at a woman I thought I knew, a woman who had broken my heart in the worst way possible. The silence between us stretched, unbearable and thick. She was still standing there, waiting for me to say something, but I couldn't. I couldn't even look at her without feeling like I might crumble. Finally, I spoke, my voice cold and distant. "I think it's time for you to leave, Eliza." Her face fell, and I could see the hurt in her eyes, but I didn't care. I didn't care about her tears or her apologies. I had been the one who was betrayed, and now I had to take control of my life again. "I need you to leave," I repeated. And just like that, she was gone. But that wasn't the end of it. It wasn't even close. Because the next day, I found something that would change everything again. Something that made me question whether I ever really knew her at all. But that's for part 8. And trust me, this is going to be the twist you didn't see coming. The days that followed Eliza's departure were some of the hardest I'd ever had to face. The apartment felt like a ghost town, empty, silent, and cold. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to disappear, to forget everything that had happened. But I couldn't. I started picking up the pieces of my life, one by one. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I thought I'd never be okay again. But slowly, I began to heal. The anger, the hurt, it started to fade, replaced by something I hadn't expected, clarity. Eliza and I had been together for years, but in the end, I realized something crucial. Sometimes, we get so caught up in the idea of someone, in the comfort of familiarity, that we forget who we are without them. I had been living for her, and now, I had to learn to live for myself. A few weeks later, I was at a cafe, sipping coffee alone, when I got a message. It was from Eliza. My heart skipped as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. "I'm sorry, Trevor. I messed up, but I don't want to lose the friendship we had. Can we talk?" I sat there for a long time, staring at the message. It wasn't an apology that fixed everything, but it was a step. It was her way of acknowledging the hurt she'd caused. And as much as I wanted to be angry, to turn away from her, I couldn't. I had already forgiven her in my heart. I just needed time. I agreed to meet her. When we sat down, there was no tension, no anger. Just two people who had been through something difficult and were trying to figure out what came next. "I never meant to hurt you, Trevor," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "I was lost, and I made a huge mistake. I'm not asking for us to go back to how things were, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I messed up." I nodded, looking at her, but I wasn't angry anymore. She had hurt me, yes, but holding on to that anger would only hurt me more. I had learned a lot about myself, about what I deserved, and about moving forward. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too," I said, "and I've realized something. We both need time. We both need to find our own way before we can even think about rebuilding anything. But I'm not mad at you anymore. I just needed to let go." We sat there in silence for a while, the weight of everything that had happened hanging in the air between us. But for the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. I had found peace within myself. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was enough. Sometimes, closure doesn't come with big dramatic moments. Sometimes, it's just about learning to let go, to forgive, and to trust yourself again. As time passed, Eliza and I kept in touch. We didn't get back together, but we found a way to be friends. We both went on separate journeys, healing in our own ways. And me? I found my own path too. I started doing things I hadn't done in years, picking up old hobbies, reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with. Slowly, I built a life for myself, one that didn't revolve around anyone else. A year later, I met someone new. She wasn't Eliza, and I wasn't trying to make her into someone she wasn't. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Real hope. Hope for the future. Hope for myself. Sometimes, the hardest moments lead to the greatest growth. And maybe, just maybe, that was the silver lining in everything that had happened. I couldn't change the past, but I could control my future. And that, in itself, was a victory. The end.